Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Spiritual Spotlight series. Today, I am joined by Sadhu. He is the Arjan of the Theravada Buddhist magic lineage. He's got a lot of masters and teachers, and I, Rachel Garrett, am going to mispronounce it. So I'm going to simplify it because he is very lovely and gracious in allowing me to do so. He is a spiritual practitioner who has spent many, many years in Asia, specifically with training under the Thai Buddhist trainings. He's an author. He does hypnotherapy. He does soul retrievals. He does exorcisms. He does it all. And I'm super excited you're here today. Thank you so much for coming on the Spiritual Spotlight series.
Thanks for having me.
And I appreciate your patience with me. So let's just jump right in. Can you maybe share your journey on how you became an Arjan of the Theravada Buddhist magic lineage?
So I became and again, anytime I make a correction, it is not to put you down or insult you at all. It's just for the proper pronunciation.
Absolutely.
So don't worry about
and
it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I became an Ajahn
Arjan.
by first I met a monk in the States, and that monk, his brother, was actually an Ajahn and a Lucy. So think of a shaman, but within Thai traditions.
Ooh.
So he's a forest shaman, the monk's brother. And so I began training with him off and on, and then eventually moved to Thailand, and I lived with him. That was a really interesting experience because I don't know if you understand how hot Thailand is year round. There is no winter. And where I was living in Nonthaburi, which is north of Bangkok by like 30, 40 minutes, it's like village slash small city. And I lived in a small room where this is going to sound ridiculous.
I'm already loving this. Thank you.
So we had a blessed bamboo stick that I would have to beat on the ground at night to make the stray street cats scatter that would come in to, do adult kitty things with the little kitty that lived with us. So I would get woken up to that, and I have to go down and, bang the stick on the ground and chase off the cats, because there's a gate to where the house is, but like there's no actual like doors essentially. So yeah, like cats could just kind of come in, and then we had like centipedes, and sometimes, like very rarely, but we did have a cobra once or twice that came in. So that's definitely something you want to see while you're squatting on the toilet. Yeah. So, and yeah, we have the squat toilets that you have to flush with the buckets of water, and no air con. Yeah, it was rough, but the trade-off with that was that I got to do some really amazing things. One month we went up to Bangkrachan, which is in an area called Ang Thong. It's like 3 hours north of Bangkok. It's as rural as it gets. Not a single person speaks an ounce of English.
Wow.
So I'm not fully fluent in Thai, but I definitely leveled up while I was over there. And I got to study and train with the warriors of Bangkrachan, who still live as they did 400 years ago. I got to learn sword fighting. I asked the teacher, like, is it okay that we're using these real swords? Like, what if I get injured? This kind of thing. And his response was essentially, well, don't get hit. So I had a lot of wacky, crazy adventures along the way, and eventually did become an Ajahn myself. And then later a Lucy, which that's kind of more of like, think of it as like a tribal sect. So they're kind of like a different denomination, if you will. An Ajahn is more of a broad term, kind of means like an occult teacher. But yeah, I mean, I'll go off my riff for now, but
I love that. When you're describing the cats and the sticks and everything, all I can see is like a cartoon. Like it just seems like an experience, like 100%. Like I just see like
it was absurd. It was just absurd.
I love that. So what drew you to study such a diverse group of masters in Thailand, and how have these experiences shaped your practice?
Well, I initially was interested in the paranormal, and I also had a lot of trauma from a pretty rocky childhood.
Mm.
And that's what got me into the hypnotherapy. And then I had some healing work and magic exposure with Wicca traditions. And then it all just kind of started pushing me into that direction. So one thing led to another. And then collectively, it was like, oh, but like this kind of has elements of that and this and that. Oh, I really like this. So that's what ultimately pushed me to the Thai branch of things.
It is interesting as you, and I'm sure you would probably agree with this, as we go deeper and deeper into like spiritual trainings or metaphysical trainings or just any type of trainings. It's just they all intersect and they all intertwine, and we may just have different words for it, but it's very interesting how you're like, oh, I can pull from here, I can pull from here, I can pull from here. It's fascinating to me. Do you experience that as well? You just kind of alluded to that.
I do. So I kind of call it different shades of the divine. And that's my way of looking at it. A really funny example, if you know like what a thought form or an egregore is. So in the Thai tradition, we have that, but
Mhm.
we call it a hun peon. And hun peons were typically made with rice husk, and then they would be bound together with like we call like monk's thread, so like loose threads that came off of a monk's robe, and they were made by ajans, and they would have that spiritual energy and condensed meditative force with an intention behind it put into this little figurine so that it could help protect the farmers property if they were away to sell crops to keep like bandits and such away from the property. They would see this giant shadow in the windows or something, and that was the hun peon. So if we just look at that one example, how is that really any different than a thought form or an egregore? It's just a different flavor of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Different shades of the divine. That's a cool way of putting that. So your background in becoming a high priest in a Wiccan coven and a master hypnotist, if I could speak. How do these traditions intersect in your practice now?
Well, with the hypnotherapy, it's kind of evolved quite a bit. So if we were to actually look at the origins of hypnotherapy, mind you, we're using a Western terminology for an Eastern
Mm,
based practice.
correct.
And it actually predates back to the Vedanta sleep temples of ancient India. And we can trace it all the way through to Francis Mesmer, the word mesmerize, the Renaissance times, et cetera, to modern day. And, psychology and neuroscientists were like, okay, so like there is a lot of validity here. We can explain this and this. That woo woo stuff we don't really understand, but this is all valid and we can put this in a box. And that's kind of where hypnotherapy kind of got branched off, but it is part of a whole wider thing, a
Yes.
more authentic thing. And when we look at something like Native American soul retrieval, for example, that is the same thing as traumatic memory resolution techniques that we use in hypnotherapy. We're
Yes.
just using different terms and different metaphors, but we're still doing deeply spiritual work, even if we have to look at it through a Western lens and we're looking at the neurology aspects and how we're affecting the body in that way. That still doesn't take away the spiritual things that are happening. So it's just like, what do you choose to focus on when you look at something?
And
So
it's
yeah, it
all
just
good.
deepened my practice.
Yeah, and almost like it's when you're working with a client, how can you meet them where they're at? And it may be just using different vocabulary or different skill sets or different this, because when you say this, I might be, oh, but if you go hypnotherapy, I'll be like, oh, so it's kind of like I'm going to meet you where you're at. And with your immersive and amazing toolbox, you're able to kind of extract and pull out, okay, maybe Rachel needs this, or maybe this person needs this. I like that.
It's all about deepening rapport with
Oh,
the client or the person that you're working with, because at the end of the day, no matter how many tools you have or how good those tools are, if you can't relate and
mm,
connect with the person that you're there to help, it's completely irrelevant. Like none of
so
that
true.
matters.
That is so true. That's a really good point. Because if you're like, yeah, I've got everything, but if we don't vibe, it's not going to work.
I mean, I play the Christian mystic game when I need to. And I mean, I had a lot of, I have nothing, I will state this, I have nothing against Christianity or any specific religious
Right.
path working, and more power to the people who benefit from those paths. But for me, I had some religious trauma growing
Mm,
up because of that. And I learned how to heal through that. And I also found a way to dive into it with refreshed eyes and an open heart again. And I've been able to use that and my other knowledge
yeah.
to kind of like stealthily package it up, present it in that Christ consciousness, and connect with the people who might not be open to doing some Vedic chants with me. But if
Right.
I can get them doing, like the Lord's Prayer, but we're actually like empowering the field of the heart, like, does it really matter if we're doing the work?
No. So one of the things you do is you actually do parasite removal. So what are astral parasites and how does your parasite removal, mantra saturation, and energetic cleansing package address them?
Well, we first need to understand the difference between the colloquial term we'll use is demon,
Okay.
because that's a relatable term that people know. I define a demon as a quasi physical, non human entity of malevolent intent.
Hmm.
Now, underneath that bracket of what I just described as a demon being, we have various levels of intelligence and skill in their predatory tactics that they use. If we go down to a lower level of that, then we start to get into more primal. So that's the difference between a skilled hunter setting traps and a tiger just waiting in wait, and then launching out and striking. They both can be effective in how they hunt.
Mm.
However, they have very different ways of going about it. So when I think about something such as a demon, I'm talking about psychological warfare, very intentional in the way that they stage a haunting. When I'm looking at an astral parasite, I'm looking at something that exactly is that, comes from what we would describe as the astral realm of existence, or um, something more akin to a shell. So these things are bottom feeders, right? And they can be just as dangerous as the aforementioned demons. However, they're a bit easier to repel and to kind of pluck away. And when we get into serious hauntings and things like that, that's when I say, well, we're more so looking into the demonic category,
Right.
or a wraith, like corrupted human spirit. But the astral parasites are, yeah, they're like bottom feeders, and they're really susceptible to high vibrations, same as demons, but the application is much easier with the
Mm.
astral parasites, such as in situations like sleep paralysis. If you look at what these things actually appear to be in your mind's eye, is merely a projection,
Mm.
and their true appearance is that of an electromagnetic cloud, like a static cloud. Some people describe it as like a blackish cloud with like light like scattering in like a thunderstorm, or
Yeah.
like this ominous red moving gaseous form. That's what they actually look like. So I would just say that, yeah, the difference between them is how I described. And what I do with the mantra saturation is I help to raise the vibrations in the person's body. So I'm kind of giving them a little plug into my circuit. And then I'm in rapport with them. So I raise my state, and by extension, it raises their state. And then we just flush out the things that are not in line with that
Mm.
state. And then we do a closeout. And what I really try to get people to understand is, okay, great, you feel right now, really good. But then a few days later, you might get hit again, or something might come around. That's why I need you to practice these techniques that I'm going to give you. It's the same like you get really dirty and you take a shower and you're clean, and then you go running around again, over a few days without any shower, you get dirty again, right? So if I
Yeah.
teach you how to take a shower daily, then you can avoid having to call me again because you have the tools now.
I really respect the fact that you're also giving your clients the tools on how to make sure that they have good, solid spiritual hygiene practices. Like that's so, so important as spiritual practitioners. We want to make sure that our clients are, I mean, it sounds like you're like, I'm going to give you the training wheels, but you're going to have to ride the bike on your own. Like,
Exactly.
I
I mean,
love
I'll
that.
show you how to start riding the bike, and but
Yeah.
like, yeah, exactly, just like you said.
That's perfect. And you do have a book. It's Demonology for the Modern Age. Do you teach
Yes.
some of these techniques and tools for how to keep somebody cleansed or can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, so in the book, I go into descriptions about stage one, stage two, and stage three. If that sounds a little bit familiar to anybody, if you've studied any of the Warrens' work,
Mm,
they talked about how certain hauntings stage, right? So in stage one, we have infestation.
mm,
So in order for an entity to successfully reach its end goal of a hostile takeover, they need to first get in alignment with you, because these things come from a lower dimension. We naturally resonate at a higher frequency than them. So,
right.
in order for them to actually have an effect with us, they need to bring us down to their level. So, to begin that, you get a little bit of you feed me, and then I can put more of a display on. That's the fear tactics, right?
Mm,
That's the external phenomena in a haunting. This then goes into stage two, which is both internal and external oppression, and it happens simultaneously.
mm,
We describe this as psychological warfare. This is where its whole intention is to break down the will of the host. And then at the third stage is possession. And you have essentially five aspects of possession that go into perfect possession and integration, but that's like a whole loaded subject. But essentially, all you really need to know in this brief description is that if we're seeing activity take place in the home, then we're going to want to employ certain tactics to help prevent it from further staging and
mhm,
then integrating with us, which is not ideal at all whatsoever. Now, I describe that you can use science itself, if we're looking at this in the basis of electromagnetism.
right.
So your heart, the University of HeartMath found that we generate, believe it's like a 6 to 9 foot circumference of an EMF field that radiates, and we can modulate that frequency intensity by doing certain prayers and breathing, and really it's focusing and attuning to your own
Mhm,
neurology.
mhm,
So we know that we can have a noticeable effect on our environment just with the electromagnetic field of our heart. This is going to be one of our really strong points of protection. And then we use water. So what happens when you introduce electricity to water? It disperses into the water, right?
right.
So if we add vinegar, what is vinegar? Vinegar is corrosive, right?
Right.
So if we have a gaseous state and something is interacting with that, it can kind of strip the charge of it. The same with iron, grounds out the charge. So we're applying basic physics here when you think about it. So you take a squirt bottle and you're going to add a piece of iron into it. It can be an iron nail, really anything with iron. Put that in there, add water into the bottle, and then dump a little bit of salt and dump a little bit of vinegar in there. Swish it all up, and then you're going to do some light breathing. You're going to put your hand on your heart, think about a very good, happy, just powerful memory of your life. And for some people that might be hard, but we all can at least agree that we can focus on a color that makes us feel good. So however you need to get there, I want you to focus on that, start breathing that in, and mix, just visualizing it in your mind's eye, golden white light surrounding you. And as you breathe in that golden white light mixed with that happy memory or that good color, when you exhale, you blow it into that spray bottle into the water. So we do this 10 times. And the key here is you want to be smiling, genuinely smiling at the end of this.
Yeah.
So we're not, playing pretend. We're really going into a state of feeling good in our body. And then we're simply sharing that state of feeling good with that water. And then we go around the house, and it's wartime. We go especially spraying in the corners. That's where they love to hide. And you spray anywhere where you feel an oppressive nature,
Mm,
or it just feels funky, or where you're having activity in the home. This is one of the very first things I employ as paranormal protocols and have every single client I work with do. Of course, I do individualized work
Right.
with
Of
them as
course.
well,
Yeah.
but that's like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like we're using war water at the start of this every time.
I am okay. I'm gonna ask you this: is this something I can do at my job?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because I find that sometimes, well, in my day life, I'm a registered nurse. I run a doctor's office, and I tend to find that sometimes our employees go into this psychological warfare, and I'm like, is that you or is that something else? And I'm like,
Well, especially like skilled nursing facilities, hospice care homes, hospitals, etc.
yes,
Are I mean, we call them like transit stations
yeah.
for
How
a
are they
reason,
not?
right?
How are they not?
Exactly. It's
Like,
the same as a graveyard. You know, things are moving through there, and
right,
obviously, not all of those things are positive intention
right,
based.
right.
So why not put some defensive measures in place?
You just made my entire week. You have no idea. Like I'm going to be when we hang up, I'm ordering a water bottle. I'm kidding. When I go to work on Monday, all of them are going down.
And it's not hard to put together. I mean, anyone
No.
can really source these ingredients. I'm in like a rural area of the Philippines right now, and I can easily go and find all of those things. It
Yes.
would not be difficult for me to get them.
Thank you for sharing that. That's just a tangible tip that can help so many people. Thank you.
Of course.
And another thing that you do is exorcisms and spirit crossings. I don't know if you're able to share because it's probably confidential. Are you able to maybe share like one moment that sticks out with you with the spirit crossing or and if you don't feel comfortable sharing, I completely
Yeah,
understand.
I can talk about that.
Okay.
I will give, obviously, I will give my clients anonymity.
Yes.
The most recent one right now, I am actively working a family case where we just did an exorcism. I have a colleague I work with. He's a Tibetan Bonpo Lama. He's a Rinpoche, a very, very accomplished man. He's one of my early teachers. And now we work together and we've solved more than 1,000 paranormal cases together to date, at least that we know of. But this family contacted me originally through my website. There was an individual who reached out and she was a friend of the family. And she was like, hey, you know, like my friends really, really need your help. Can I get you in contact with them? Will you help them? So we go into the situation and it's already late stage 2.
Mm.
We're seeing transient possessive states of one of the young daughters in the home where she was threatening to end, the lives of other family members. She had been committed for her safety and the safety of the family. And it's one of those moments. Well, I run into a lot of different cases that are. I wouldn't say that everyone isn't special, but when you're doing something for so long, and I'm sure you can relate with this with nursing,
Yeah.
like you have certain patients, right, that are kind of like run of the mill, like this is something you
Yes.
encounter regularly, and then
Yes.
you have the ones that stand out.
You're
It
like,
doesn't take away from the work
no.
of each person, but some stand out,
Yes.
and this is one of those perfect examples because this is a family that is completely innocent. They have done nothing wrong. They don't deserve this. And I'm not saying others do, but it's just like it's one of those, it really just hits on the head that like, damn, this can really happen to anybody.
Yes.
And I'm dealing with the mother, I'm dealing with the kind of stepdad, like he's the father figure who's
Right.
committed for the long run here. And I'm dealing with the 2 children in the house, and the youngest is she's I'll just say she's around 10. Um, and it's just like you see these people looking at you to just cure and solve it all, just terror and fear in their eyes, going over the evidence. Like I have evidence from them where like you can see the daughter's face like morphing and changing in one of
Wow.
the videos where they're filming. And that's another thing is when I take on cases, like I will, when it comes to exorcism and like severe hauntings, I will help anybody in that regard for free. When it comes to teaching, selling amulets, things of that nature, like that's where you pay me for my services.
Of course. Of
But when
course.
it comes to people's lives are truly in danger, that's my charity work. My most dangerous work I do for free, and I do it with my full heart in it. So like you get 100% of me when I'm
Yeah.
doing that work. Just because I'm not being paid for that work doesn't mean you get a lesser version of
Of
me.
course. Of course.
But yeah, this family, yeah, they sent me a lot of interesting videos, like things flying off the wall, rolling down on the ground in weird ways that like just doesn't make sense. Like it shouldn't be able to do it that
Right.
way,
Right.
and hearing voices on the tapes and all of that. So this is my most current case I'm working right now. And we've started to make some big headway. We did all of the sessions, individual family sessions.
Yeah.
I didn't charge for any of that because it's part of the work ultimately in getting them out of alignment with this entity that's in the home. We did deep trauma healing on each one of the family members. We taught them how to breathe light. I gave them several paranormal protocol measures, et cetera, et cetera. And we're seeing the phenomena go down. So this is going to be one of those situations where in severe hauntings, this is the misconception is the big bad exorcist comes in,
Mm,
clears out the entity, and then it's gone. If you want to know how this stuff really works, actually, is if you have someone in active late stage 2 or in stage 3, once we eject the entity out of the host body, then it goes back into the environment of the home. So then that sounds bad, but it's actually good because then that means we've localized the haunting back
right.
into the home. Then we can beat it down, combat it, and eventually push it out.
Yeah.
But that takes time.
Of
And that's
course.
why they have to be empowered. They have to know what to do. This is like, I call it spiritual maintenance. When we get into that phase, it's all about spiritual maintenance.
Yeah.
We had one case that was like the worst one we ever worked. There was UFO phenomena, like there were items like manifesting and teleporting into the neighbor's home and vice versa. There was like feces that would teleport into their food, enclosed, sealed, contained food, unopened boxes of cereal. When they would go and open it, and there was like human feces inside the cereal mixed in, and like just insane. And we actually have like on my YouTube channel, if you scroll back, it's called The Ronicle. I put a disclaimer on this because it is quite disturbing. I
Yeah.
have conversations where we are on the phone with the entity. It is not a soundtrack. It is not modified or changed footage in any way. It is an actual intelligent diabolical force speaking and taunting us with a voice and using the human language to a very high degree.
Yeah.
I actually have those, and I have casework folder in my Google Drive with more than 100 documented cases with undeniable phenomena in there.
Yeah.
So it's like my mind just kind of scatters between a lot of different cases. But
Yeah.
one where I did a spirit crossing, the most notable one for me was when I helped a woman cross her son of over 30 years past who had drowned in the family pool. And this lady was like in her 60s now,
Yeah.
and she started to get phenomena happening in the house. And we ended up finding out very quickly that it was the deceased son. And then we addressed it. We did a spirit crossover. So that's kind of different than like me going in on an exorcism type of case. And yeah, she ended up waking up in like the next day with a rose on her bed with no explanation of where it came from.
Yeah.
She lived alone. There was nobody over. Like there was no reason or explanation for a rose to be on her bed. It was a fresh red rose, and it was Mother's Day. And that night, she had a dream where she saw her son like grown, and he had been like, essentially in whatever words were conveyed to me, the explanation was
Yeah.
along the lines of like, I forgive you. It was not your fault. Like, it's okay, mom. Like you can
Yeah.
let go. And she was so emotional, and she was like telling me, thank you, Sadhu, for the best Mother's Day gift I could never imagine I'd get. And like those kind of moments, like, yeah, they make me cry in a good way. And they remind me when I become jaded doing this work,
Yeah.
why I still do it. And it re-softens my heart and it keeps me committed in it.
That is so beautiful. And I respect you so much for the fact that, these people that are in such traumatic situations that you're giving them a service for free. Like that's a beautiful thing. And you're giving all of your service. And the fact that you've done over 1,000 cases. Wow.
I mean, think about it this way, buildings on fire, or, somebody is actively engaging in grievous bodily harm to someone on the streets.
Yeah.
You call the police and you call the firefighters. Do they show up and say, money, please? No,
No.
they show up and they do their job.
No.
Now,
Right.
you call a lawyer to represent you, or you go to the hospital to get medical care or something done. You pay for those services, right? Yeah. There's a very big difference.
There is a very big difference. It's the same thing as being a nurse. Like if somebody's in the street, I'm going to help them. It's different. Like it's different in times of need. You're going to step up and show up. So that's amazing. So one of the things you just touched upon was that you actually do amulets and talismans. They're highly regarded. Can you maybe share the process of their creation and what the rituals are involved in?
Oh man, some of them are truly wild. So we had this boar lucra, as it's called, that we made up in the north one time with one of my masters, and that involved us like catching a wild hog in the jungle. And I kid you not, as they were holding it, we trapped it, like didn't harm it, but like we trapped it like basically like a rope snare trap.
Yeah.
And then we were holding it down, and I had to pluck ball hairs from this wild hog so that we could use those in an amulet. Some amulets have human remains. Some are made from herbs. Some are made from like things such as incense powders from 108 different temples. So from the main altar where the big Buddha is in the temple, you have something that's called Somdesh Pa. And Somdesh Pa, one of the classic famous Thai amulets, and the way it's made is, and this is just one of the ingredients, you have to use the Somdesh Pa powder because it's like a clay votive pressed with this specific image, right? Yeah. The Buddha like meditating on the stupa. And so you have this one ingredient, which is composed of 108 incense ashes from different temples. And then you have things like mitmor, we call like an exorcist blade or like a blessing blade used. And usually the blade is actually a flattened nail that comes from the roof of a temple, which has been soaked in mantra and saturated with like meditating monk energies for decades. So like, yeah, there's a lot of really, really interesting materials that are sourced. I've made some really, really cool ones with some of my masters. I often I base in Thailand, but I live in Southeast Asia. Like right now I'm in the Philippines. I go back to Thailand for some business on the 5th of next month. And then I'm only there for like a week and a half. And then I'm going to be in Sri Lanka for a bit. And I'm going to be journeying around the whole country there, doing some crazy adventures. But yeah, so I go to Thailand a lot. And when I go to Thailand, it's go meet my monks, go train with my forest shamans, get the blessings, give the blessings, help some people, and get inventory. So it's like, it's funny when business becomes spirituality because they seem like they would clash. And on some levels, you do have to kind of like gear it back around and like, you know what I mean? But it actually works really, really well on some levels.
I love that. Wow. Your amulet, that sounds such a powerful thing to have in a possession of someone. Like, oh, I'm gonna have to be checking one of those out. Like, wow. Before I ask you the last question, if anyone is interested in learning more about you or booking a session, I mean, you have a lot to offer. Where is the best place for them to go to?
www.thesadhudah.com, thesadhudah.com.
Oh, perfect. And finally, based on your extensive experience and diverse training, what piece of advice would you offer to our listeners to enhance their spiritual journey in daily lives?
I would say that the biggest thing people underestimate is the simplicity of a message. And it's really easy to dive deep to try to extrapolate some hidden meaning from things. But when we're talking about like concepts of stillness and widening the awareness and being present, I mean, it's not really complicated. It's actually very, very, very simple, but it takes a lot of hard work. And it takes a lot of getting past the complications of learning to get to that simple aha moment. And just for anybody out there who is practicing, who's been on the road for years and you know, trying to figure this all out, become enlightened, you know, best version of himself, all that, it doesn't have to be super elaborate.
Mm.
If you want it to be, it can be, but really all you need is, and I know it sounds hokey, to go inward, but like it really actually is that. I'm not joking. It is actually that simple.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Spiritual Spotlight series. It's been truly a pleasure, and I really hope you come back again.
I would love to.